Hey guys, welcome to a new video. My first video back, which is going to be a pretty hard one to get through. I've tried several times. If you don't follow me on Twitter or Facebook, you will know by the title of this video that my dad passed away. It happened on March 31st, which has been a little over a month at the time of recording this for maybe the fourth time. I want to say, first of all, thank you so much to everybody that, left me a comment on Twitter or Facebook or DM and called me and sent packages, care packages, commented, on, under other videos and things. Just thank you guys so much for all of the love and all of the support. I'm so lucky to have friends like you guys. I hadn't been really uploading prior to my dad passing away, so I thought I would talk about what had been going on, basically where I've been, and what happened to him, and try to get through without bawling my eyes out. The first time I did this video, I was drinking. I wasn't drunk, but I was drinking beer while I was filming it. And you guys know that I struggle with sobriety issues, mostly with alcohol. And I didn't want it to trigger somebody to want to drink, and it just didn't feel right to post that. I'm sorry, the lighting is so messed up in here. Anyway, so then the other two times I filmed it, I was just a mess, and I wanted to be able to get through this and talk about everything. So anyway, thank you guys so much for all of the love. So late January, early February. Well, let me start real quick by saying that when my husband and I got married, we lived in a little apartment in Shaler. I love that place. Hardwood floors, French doors, And eventually when my grandma needed more help and my mom wasn't here and she worked nights as a nurse, there was an offer from my dad to move into the house. I would help take care of my grandmother. We would be able to save on rent. At this point, we did adopt Laddie, so it was great to have a nice big yard. We didn't have a yard at the apartment. We had this little slab of cement and we couldn't really put anything out there because everything, we put out little lawn chairs and a little table that was stolen, hammock stolen. So anyway, it just seemed like a good fit. Come back here, save some money, take care of Bam. After Bam, that's my grandma, after she passed away, we saved up money, things, life happens, and eventually I was taking care of my dad. So late January, early February, it really started to be a little more than normal when, me taking care of him, he needed a little more help. He has suffered from congestive heart failure quite a few times. And, towards the end of February, I was thinking, again, maybe he was going into congestive heart failure. His legs were swollen. Let me tell you, he never really took care of himself. At some point, it just feels like he gave up, that he didn't want, to try. I don't really know how to explain it. But, his legs were swollen, he's short of breath. He would get around with a walker and be on oxygen anyway. He has a pacemaker. There's a lot of stuff. Leukemia, he was getting chemo treatments. They were getting harder for him to go to. Thank goodness he got a medical marijuana card, because before that, those chemo treatments, they really took him out. But his leukemia for the past few years had been in remission, but he would get IgG. It's like a maintenance type chemo. Just to keep his cell counts, balanced. So, anyway, towards the end of February, I was getting suspicious that he might be going into congestive heart failure, and some of those symptoms: swollen legs, shortness of breath, confusion. My grandma, when she would get it, she would get really confused. And my dad at that point wasn't confused, but he was really weak, and, he wasn't taking care of himself as far as eating wise or taking his Lasix. Putting his legs up. It was just a struggle, to get him to do stuff. And it pissed me off because, you're my dad. You're supposed to want to live and see your grandkids, I don't know if he just gave up, or he was just tired of living the way that he was. I don't know. Oh, so in mid-March or so, um well, no, towards the end of March, really, about 2 weeks before he died, he was really confused. And this was like a different type of confusion. And it would, he would talk to himself. I don't know that he really talked to himself as much as he thought that he was talking to somebody else. At first I was like, maybe this is sundown syndrome because of it happening in the evening. But like, he would say to my mom, like, oh, I'm not going with you today, and she's like, I'm not even going anywhere, you know what I mean? Just very confused. At this point, I'm still thinking maybe it's congestive heart failure, so I'm begging him to go to the hospital. He won't go. I have never seen him so fired up in his eyes. He's like, I'm not fucking going to the hospital. Just leave me the fuck alone. Just screaming at me. His eyes were like really big and wild, and it hurt me because I'm like, I know something's wrong. Like, my mom and I, nurses, not idiots, and it killed me that it didn't matter how much I tried to get him to go, or how much my mom tried to get him to go to the hospital. He just flat out refused. He fell 3 times. His balance was off. Still, he wouldn't go. So this happened, I think, Wednesday, which was before that Tuesday that he passed away. That Wednesday, I got him to eat some bananas and a little bit of milk with sugar. I got him to drink some Gatorade. If for some reason, I don't know, I'm sure that did nothing, but he was able to sleep, and he had been like awake for like 2 or 3 days straight, just shaking awake, and so that Thursday, it seemed like he was back to normal. I had literal tears of joy. I was like, it is so great to see you like this. I'm so happy. I didn't know the severity of like what was going on. He was still weak, but he wasn't confused anymore. He was, pretty sprightly, and that made me feel good, but I still wanted him to go to the hospital, but he wouldn't. That weekend, he ended up seeing my 2 nephews and my niece. I got him his favorite burger from Sheetz. We all watched a Fleetwood Mac show on VH1. And then that Sunday, he needed help getting to the bathroom from like all 3 of us, my mom, Bob, and myself. And we were having to push him in the computer chair. And I'm like, you have to go to the hospital. Please go to the hospital. Wouldn't go to the hospital. So at some point, like late afternoon, Bob and I were kind of sleepy. We had been hanging out with Laddie and stuff. So we were like, oh, we're just going to take like a little nap. And my mom starts pounding on the door, pounding on the windows outside. And I'm like, what is going on? Because she was supposed to go to my brother's to watch the kids. And often they'll want to borrow our PlayStation or something. And I wasn't in the mood. I was like, oh, that's probably what she wants. Eventually, when she starts almost breaking down the door, we wake up, and we go to the door, and she's like, Bob, that's my dad's name. Bob wasn't breathing. The ambulance had to come. He like died. We're like, what is going on? What happened? What happened? And she had taken him to the bathroom, and he was so out of breath when he got back to his chair that he just couldn't get any air. I mean, his oxygen thing was up to like 6 or 7. And she said, I'm calling the ambulance. And he said, okay. Like, he finally said, okay. But when they got here, they sent 2 young girls, small, petite girls, and he's like 300 pounds, and this was not going to work. So they had to call for other people. And my mom said that, like, he put his head down, like, he just kind of went limp, and he was like, this is it. And when they had him on the stretcher, like, his eyes were just looking to nowhere. They did end up being able to get a pulse, a thready one, but still. And they took him to the hospital. Later that night, a nurse from ICU called, because this was right during this virus, like, lockdown and everything. So we couldn't even go to the hospital. They wouldn't let us. And the nurse said, and I quote, because she was on speaker, he's here, he made it, he is intubated, he kept trying to pull out his tube, so we have him in ICU. So that made my mom and I feel like, oh, okay, well, maybe it was the congestive heart failure, maybe maybe he's going to be okay. But like we kind of looked at each other knowing that that reflex to take that tube out is there regardless. So we weren't really sure what was going on. So we weren't able to go see him that night. Monday morning, my mom talked to the actual doctor in the ICU. And I remember I was taking Laddie for a walk and I came home and I heard her on the phone. And I walked up the steps and she hung up the phone and she said, he's dying. And I was like, oh my God, like what is going on? And she said his kidneys are failing, like everything's going, and they want me there sooner than later. And I was like, okay, I'm going with you, even if I can only sit in the car, or maybe you can go in because of the virus, maybe you can go in and then ask them if you can come out and I can go in. So that was like the longest trip to the hospital like ever. And I sat in the car while she went in, and then I was allowed to go in. And I was on the phone with her. She called from her cell phone in ICU to mine. And she asked the doctor, she said, is it okay if my daughter comes in to say goodbye? Oh, and it just killed me. And I was sitting there like just tweeting random stuff because I was in the car all by myself, like freaking out. I'm like, this is not happening, When I was able to go in and see him, it was the worst. And his legs were all mottled, all blue and swollen and leaking, and he ended up getting an infection, sepsis, he had strep, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And it likely started maybe a week prior to him getting confused. And at this point, it was just so bad. His blood pressure was so low. He just couldn't fight it, I mean, they tried everything. I don't know if you guys saw a picture I posted of like all the machines he was hooked up to. I mean, they really tried. They tried everything. So, we weren't able to stay long, but I told him that I forgave him for stuff because this is why I didn't want to do this, because, I'm such a mess. I'm sorry. I told him that I forgave him for everything, and I hope he forgave me, because we would fight. He wasn't like the greatest dad. He was an alcoholic for a while. For a lot of my, formative years, he was just sitting in a chair, passed out, But then he got healthy, and we would go to baseball games together. I took him out for his birthday. I got us really great seats at a Pirates game, and then I took him to the Hard Rock Cafe, and I made them sing happy birthday to him. Well, I asked the guy, can you guys really embarrass him and sing happy birthday to him? And he's like, oh, I gotcha. They brought him up on the stage and had everybody sing to him. And oh, I hope I can find those pictures. That was like pre-cell phone with you all the time, but I took like so many pictures. It was so much fun. Him and I just had a special, although it was toxic at times, like we were best friends. He'd always call me the good one, and he'd always tell me, don't take any shit from anybody, and I think I get like my bluntness from him, and definitely like my sense of humor. He was so funny. Him and I would josh around with my mom, and oh, it was just, but there was a lot of fighting because he wasn't taking care of himself, or like he would be miserable, so he would take it out on everybody, and I would get sick of it, and so that's why I told him I forgave him for those things. And at that point, his brain activity was pretty limited, but it was still there. So, I mean, I don't know if he heard me or not, but I hope so. That night the doctor called and was like, we could try this other antibiotic. My mom was like, well, miracles do happen. So they tried that. And then they called about 5 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday morning on the 31st, and said, he's going, you got to get here soon. So I called my, I guess, ex-sister-in-law to go get the kids from my brothers so that my brother could come. My sister, that's a whole different story that I don't even want to talk about. But so it was Bob and my mom, myself and my brother in there. And I mean, he was so mottled, his head was, his hands, it was so sick to see him like that, because on one hand, he was the type that was like, I don't care what you got to do, keep me alive. I don't want to miss out on all the new technology. And on the other hand, it was like he totally would not have wanted that. Like, if my mom had just waited, he would have just died in his chair. Like, he kept saying that he wanted to go, like that. We were there. We were, kind of just talking to him and holding his hand and stuff, and giving him kisses, and we were gonna stop, all of the machines, but while we were all in there sitting around him, he naturally passed. The guy came in, and when he said, because you have to announce it loudly, time, like this really quiet, meek doctor, but when he came in to call it, you have to announce it, loudly. And he said, time of death, 9 a.m., and we just kind of lost it. Not kind of, we all just did. I stayed for only maybe like 5 or 10 minutes after that, and then but my mom and my brother stayed, and she said that they let them stay as long as they wanted to with him. They took all the tubes out and everything, but his face was just anyway. I'm glad I didn't see that part. So he was cremated a couple days later. He is sitting by his recliner upstairs. I miss him. It is so weird not having him here. He was a very big, like, presence, and I kind of blame myself. My mom blames herself too. Like, we knew, but what could we do? I mean, we tried so hard to get him to go, and he just refused. He did not want to go to the hospital. I think we're always going to sort of carry like a little bit of guilt with us. I mean, it was as far as trying to drag him there. You know what I mean? And when the ambulance would come to pick him up, he would appear to be of sound mind. And he's like, I can go to the hospital. They're not taking him, So I think we'll always have a little bit of guilt for that. But he did teach me how to drive, and he was really great in a lot of ways. And I think that, I don't know, I'm glad that he got a chance to walk me down the aisle, and that he got to see his grandkids that last weekend, and I think, he's not going to see my kids if I ever have any, I miss talking to him every morning. I get up between like 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning, and he would just talk to me about all of these things that were so trivial. He was always watching all the things on Discovery and the History Channel and telling me all of these like trivial things. But now I have all of this information, and maybe I'll need it someday. But we always had our talks, and I'm gonna miss him laughing. Oh my goodness. And for some reason, when he called me at midnight on my birthday this past January, and he sang happy birthday to me, and I saved it, and I'm so glad that I did, because I didn't take a ton of videos and stuff of him. But I've been suffering with a little bit of depression and stuff since then, so I hadn't really been feeling like uploading. But I'm going to upload more regularly now, because I missed you guys. And again, thank you guys so much for all the support. I'm getting really sort of anxious, and I'm going to end this video. But thank you again so much. And I hope everybody is safe, wearing their masks, staying at home. And I really love you guys, and I look forward to making more lighthearted type of content soon. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Love and hugs. Bye.